Hi people, it's me again, of course, as always, Andrew as usual, Moino Ravenberg. As you can tell, as always, Andrew as usual, in this video I'll be covering a pagan god that should be, relatively speaking, unknown to most people in general. Um, this is a god of the Illyrians, or the Illyrian tribe, um, by the name of Medauron, or Medauros, or Medaurus. I'll be using the first name Medauron or Medauros. In any case, Medauros, before I continue and I get into details, anything of interest, as always and as usual, you can find it linked in the description of this video. The Wikipedia page on the Illyrians, who the Illyrians were, the region they inhabited, Illyria, and Illyrian religion. Illyria is especially popular in the sense of something that resembles mainstream. For example, applicable to me, I know Illyria from Macedonian times. So when Alexander the Great was still alive, he conscripted a lot of Illyrians to fight for him, or a considerable amount, as well as the fact that during the time when the Roman Empire was in its heyday, the Illyrians gave them a good deal of trouble, and in a similar vein to Germanic tribes and whatnot. Either that, or the Illyrians were also part of the Germanic coalition that staunchly resisted Roman rule and conquest and whatnot. Okay, in any case, again, that's the general knowledge I have of Illyria, what little knowledge I have of Illyria. Again, for accurate information, or as close as you'll come to accurate information, see the aforementioned sources in the description of this video. As well as a video that will appear at the end screen that will give you practical and very informative knowledge on the Illyrians. Again, the end screen as well as the video linked in the information linked in the description of this video. Now let's get down to the occult tidbits. Medauros, he was mentioned allegedly as a war god that the Illyrians worshipped, so to speak. And it is indeed correct. Planetarily, he does align with the planet Mars. It's not a coincidence that I'm covering this on a Tuesday. It just came to me, honestly. I was simply watching the same video that I shared with you guys in the aforementioned manners, and I saw his name pop up, and it just intrigued me, and I did the rest, and here we are. Yeah, he is indeed a war god. He aligns with Mars, with ruling zodiac sign Aries, yes. Specifically 10 degrees in Aries, and that's quite a potent degree astrologically. And I spoke to him. He looks like a typical Macedonian soldier with a spear in hand and wearing Macedonian armor, similar to any depiction of Alexander. Like, if you want to know exactly, how Macedonian soldiers dressed back in the day, I especially like their beautiful armor. Then look up the movie Alexander with the actor Colin Farrell. Still one of my favorite movies, honestly. Alexander the Great. And you'll see exactly how Macedonians dressed to get battle ready and whatnot. That's how he appears, and he for the rest appears as also a fair-haired man, or a man that is fair in complexion, both skin color wise as well as hair. So essentially a Caucasian looking blonde man, but Caucasian specifically in a Mediterranean context. I do need to point out that Medauros, based on the information that I extracted from him, using my own research the way I do by default, I noticed something, which is that at the very least him, don't know about the other Illyrian gods, I haven't looked into any of them, it's just Medauros, but at the very least him alone, or applicable to him alone, they didn't worship him the way we're used to seeing people, or the way that people perceive pagans worshipping pagan gods, their gods, back when a good deal of the known world was still polytheistic. So they worship multiple gods rather than one omnipotent god. So like in major religions nowadays, Christianity and whatnot. No, and so instead of monotheism, it's like when polytheism was the so-called norm back in the day, just plain norm. Then I noticed that compared to then, in the same way that, for example, the Norse worship their gods like um, Odin, Loki, and Thor, and the Greeks worship like Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Applicable to Medauros, they didn't like worship him in the same context. It's more based on the information, like I said, that I gathered. I noticed that the worship wasn't in the sense of worshiping a deity that has like a dominant role over them. It was more worship in the context of a brother or a confidant, someone that you truly place your trust in and that you look towards guidance for, rather than worshipping him as like some deity sitting on a throne, presiding or residing over either a part of the world or a specific aspect of life. So more in a brotherly like fashion compared to the usual hegemonic manner, I want to say, or just deific manner. So I'm assuming people know what I mean. Okay, so um, Medaurus was worshipped more as a brother and a confidant and a guidance counselor, bluntly put, rather than a deity that rules over people. And yeah, let me see, what else can I say? Yeah, last but not least, when I spoke to Medauros, other than his appearance, like I mentioned, he is. I also asked him if his worshipper, so if Illyrians back in the day when he was worshipped, if they looked just like him, because I found his appearance quite beautiful, and he told me, to the point where he almost wanted to chuckle a little. He was like, no. And he showed me what Illyrians actually looked like, and they looked like typical dark-haired people from the Mediterranean. So people that looked like him were relatively speaking rare. No different than modern day, for example, Southern Europe with Italians and Spanish and Portuguese people. A good deal of them being dark-haired and being more tan in appearance, like beigeish or slightly brownish, rather than full-blown like white. And blonde and blue eyes and everything. And the reason why I asked him, so okay, then why do you look like that? Despite the fact that I already knew the answer, that's what I was hinting at. But he simply, I didn't literally ask that as far as I recall, like a minute or so ago, but he could sense that it was coming, and he simply told me, the way I look is essentially an idealized version an idealized version of them. And I could see that because he looked just like them, of course, and this is not uncommon. This is quite common. It's quite the opposite. It's common. But he simply told me that I'm essentially the ideal version of them. Okay, the image they have of me is this. So I am like the version. The way I look is how they want it to look, but that's not what they look like in actuality. So yeah, for the rest, again, they look like typical. The Illyrians look like typical. The way I described, like you would expect people to look like back in those days, Mediterranean people, dark-haired men and women, and the men more often than not had beards, etc. But again, you know, the typically reminiscent of Greek culture back in the day in BC times. Yeah, in BC times. Let me see, did I forget anything? Yeah, no, that is it. Again, check out the information in the video. Bye bye.